Welcome to Foodie with a Freezer, where you can learn to make and freeze lots of different recipes so that you can make delicious home-cooked meals without having to cook dinner every night. My name is Lori and I've been freezer cooking for years. Today I'm going to show you how to make chicken pot pie for your freezer. It's a classic comfort food. It's yummy and delicious. It's a creamy sauce filled with chicken, vegetables, and it's topped with a flaky pastry crust. What's not to love? Chicken, of course, is going to be the main ingredient. I cooked this earlier, chopped it up. To make it quicker, you could also use a rotisserie chicken. I've done that a lot of times. It works great. We've got some carrots, celery, onion, frozen peas. Don't use canned, they'll get too mushy. Here's some beef or chicken broth I made earlier with the chicken. If you want to know how to do that, very easy. Check out the link above. But if you don't have time to do that or don't want to, I really like this better than bouillon. Or you could use canned chicken broth, that works too. Here's some pie crust I've already made also and had in my freezer. Check out the link for how to make pie crust. It's not hard and intimidating. I'll walk you through it. And then we're also going to need flour and butter and of course salt and pepper. Oh, and a little bit of half and half. And you can also use whole milk if you want, or you could use the fat-free half and half. I've done that before. After you have all your vegetables chopped and your chicken chopped, you're going to melt some butter in a big Dutch oven. I will say I recommend using butter. I've tried it before with olive oil and it just didn't turn out as good. So splurge and use some butter. When the butter's fully melted, then you're going to add the carrots, the onions, and the celery. You're going to saute it for a few minutes till they're tender. We've sauteed these for several minutes. I'm going to say probably about 7. Here's how I tell if they're about ready to go. I take a fork, I get a piece of carrot, which is usually the hardest thing, and I would call that tender. Not mushy. You don't want it mushy, just tender. All right, now we're going to make a roux, and don't let that word scare you. A roux is a mixture of fat and flour. That could be butter, it could be vegetable oil, it could even be drippings off a piece of meat. A roux is used to thicken a sauce. And so ordinarily if you're making a roux, you're going to melt butter and add flour straight to it. This has got vegetables in it. That's a little different, but it's still a roux. I'm just going to dump my flour in there and I'm going to start stirring it around till all the flour is soaked into the butter. And this is very important, this next step. Once all the flour is soaked into the butter, like that, then you're going to cook it and stir it for another probably about 2 minutes. You don't want it to burn, so make sure you don't have your heat too high. The reason you're going to do this is that will get rid of any raw flour taste. We've cooked and stirred our butter, flour, and vegetable mixture for a couple of minutes. I may have even gone a minute extra just because that's the way I am. I want to make sure there's no raw flour taste. So next we're going to slowly add the chicken broth. Stir that around as you're adding it. And you'll notice that it's thickening right off. Keep stirring it. Next, you're going to add the half and half. Stirring it continuously. So keep stirring and cooking it until it thickens up. Should take about 3 or 4 minutes. Okay, so I've continued cooking and stirring this for probably 3 or 4 minutes, and it's thickened up nicely. So now I'm going to add the chopped chicken. Stir that in, and some salt and pepper. In a few minutes I'll taste it and see if I've got the seasoning about right. Stir that together and then add the frozen peas. You won't need to cook anymore once you've added the frozen peas because they will get perfectly cooked after you bake it in the oven. Okay, now comes the time we're going to divide this up into freezer containers, and you can pick whatever works for you. These are some containers I invested in several years ago. They have a lid on them. You could use disposable little individual sizes. You could get a larger size. You could even use a big casserole dish for your family. And what I do is, I've made a couple of these here. I line the pan, I spray it first with a little bit of cooking spray. Then I line it with foil. I'll put the filling in it along with the crust, and I'll freeze it. Then once it's frozen, I can lift this out. I'll pull the foil off, and I'll wrap the remaining filling and crust really well and freeze that. That way, it frees up my little containers, my little glass dishes for other things, plus takes up less space in your freezer. And here's a nifty way to make these little aluminum foil liners. Turn your pan over, get a piece of aluminum foil and put it over the outside of the pan, this way. Got it a little off center. Then turn it over. Way easier than trying to start at the inside. And there you go. I usually spray the inside of the foil with a little bit of cooking spray also. I've ladled the filling into my different containers. I'm putting these 4 in my freezer. These 2 are for dinner tonight. Earlier, I had pastry crust, pie crust in my freezer, so I got that out. And be sure and check out my other video about how to make pie crust. It's not hard, I know you can do it. But if you wanted to, of course, at this point, you can use refrigerated pie crust. That works great. Another thing you could do is go ahead and freeze it without any topping. If you wanted to do biscuits, a lot of people like biscuits, freeze it like this, bake it, and then when probably 10-15 minutes, however long the biscuits take to bake, put those on at the top when it's just about done, and you've got a great dinner. Time to roll out the pastry dough, and I'll tell you, this is a great thing. This covering, OXO makes this. It's got marks on it for if you're doing a round crust or if you're doing a square crust. It's great, plus it goes in the dishwasher, easy to clean up. So there's a quick tip. I would say if you're going to do a lot with pastry crust, get you one of these things. You want to flour your rolling pin just a little bit. I've had this in the freezer. I put it in my refrigerator for maybe 15 minutes, so it's still pretty cold, which is what you want. So I'm going to have to kind of work with it so it doesn't break. Use your rolling pin to flatten it out and keep pinching it together as you get it. You can't roll it out all at once. Since my containers are rectangular, I'm going to try to work this pastry dough into a rectangle shape. And you want to roll it about less than 1/4 of an inch. I'd say about 1/8 of an inch thick. You can run your hand over it and you'll be able to feel where it's not even. I like to use a pizza cutter to get the correct shape for my container. So once the chicken pot pies were completely frozen, I removed them from the casserole dish, I peeled off the aluminum foil, and then I sealed them in my vacuum sealer. But of course you don't have to have a vacuum sealer. You can wrap them up directly in the casserole dish. Just be sure to wrap them really well so you don't get any freezer burn. And they should keep for about 3 to 6 months. To bake these, I found that the texture is the best if you allow them to thaw completely before baking. When you're ready to bake it, then preheat your oven to 375. Make 4 or 5 slits with a knife in the top of the pot pie. That allows the steam to escape. And you're going to bake it uncovered for about 1 hour to 1 hour and 15 minutes, or until the crust is golden brown and flaky and the filling is bubbly. If you make this delicious recipe, be sure and let me know in the comments how you liked it. And if you liked this video, please hit the subscribe button, and we'll see you next time.